Okay, this is going to be a long video, so if you don't like long videos, maybe you should just skip forward and move on to the next video. But if you do, and you're curious, then stick around. You're going to find out my journey into perfume land. How did I get here? Why am I doing videos? You asked for it, and I'm going to give it to you. So if you want to find out, please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. If this is your first time tuning into my channel and you love watching fragrance reviews, finding out about new fragrances, discovering new brands, and of course participating in giveaways and still haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. So I've been getting a lot of emails from you guys asking me to do specific topics on different things, and this was one of the ones that came up quite frequently. I got 3 different messages requesting me to do this, and I thought, you know what, it is time for me to do this, and I'm just going to lay it all out for you guys. It's going to be a long video. It could be up to an hour, and I'm going to give it to you all from the beginning up until now. And my journey in this perfume adventure, if I want to call it that, perfume land, wherever I'm at, is going back to when I was very young. It does go back, but the obsession didn't start until the 90s, and then more obsession didn't start until the late 2000s, and then that's how I ended up here. But I'm going to tell you from the very beginning and up until now. And if you are interested in having me do videos on specific topics, you can send me an email to lfsgquestions@gmail.com, and I'll do the videos as soon as I can. I'm doing about 1 video a week on this type of series of videos, and I'll continue doing them until we run out of questions. But there's so many questions that are coming in, I don't think I'll ever run out. Anyway, let's get started. So I was born in 1970. Right after the 60s and then the beginning of the 70s. I consider myself a very 70s and 80s kind of influence guy. I love the era of the 70s, and I love the era of the 80s because that's when I kind of grew up and matured. But I was born in 70 in the country called Lebanon, and Lebanon is where my family had ended up. Me being 100% Armenian, actually I'm 98% Armenian, and I have like a percent Italian blood in me as well. Plus my grandparents were from Turkey and they spoke Turkish. So I have a lot of different cultures and influences in me as a person. So being born Armenian, I grew up Christian Orthodox. So Christianity is a very, very important religion for the Armenians, and it was something that we did. Went to church all the time. And my very first associations of smells is church smells, the incense. So the Armenian church, the Orthodox church, has a big usage of the incense. In fact, we burn the incense in the house in addition to smelling it at the church. So the incense smells has left a big influence on me as far as smells go. So I really enjoy those smoky, incensey fragrances as being one of my favorite styles of fragrances, and I do enjoy the smell. In fact, when I go to a church, I love the way the church smells because of the incense smoke from the church, the old mustiness of the church, if it is an old church, especially in Europe where I travel to a lot, as churches here in this country are fairly new, but the old ones, you can smell that old age of the church, the wood and the furniture along with the smoke. I really like that smell. It's kind of a big smell for me as far as the kinds of smells I like. I like that old musty kind of damp along with the incense smoke. So those are kind of like things that were influenced. But me being born in Lebanon, in the middle of the Middle East, in the tiny little country, spices were really big for us, really big. But the thing is, it doesn't get really deep into spices like, let's say, for example, India, where it's really heavy on the spices. We did do a lot of spices, but it's also very fresh because that Mediterranean, where I'm born in, utilizes a lot of different fresh elements like lemons and herbs and things like that. So a lot of those spices, herbs, and then the fruits and vegetables left a major impression on me with smells go, because my mom is an amazing cook. She cooks the best food ever. hands down one of the best cooks. I don't really go to Middle Eastern restaurants because nothing can come close to what my mom does as far as cooking goes. Her cooking is just out of this world, amazingly delicious. So I was raised with my mom, of course. I have a brother and a sister younger than me. I'm the oldest. And I was kind of responsible for helping mom with her cooking. So I cooked a lot with her, baked a lot with her. Baking is completely different than the regular, like the savory cooking, although some of the spices from baking did transition over to some of the like the savory foods. For example, rice, we use some spices in there. During the holidays, you use cinnamon cloves, allspice in the rice with meat in it. So all of those smells are really, really important for me. So I love spices. Smelling of spices, visiting the spice markets. For example, as a young kid, we traveled to all over the Middle East before the big wars started. So my father, my mom, and I was very young before my brother was born. We travel all over the Middle East, such as places like Syria and Turkey, for example. We'd go there all the time and visiting those markets. I mean, even after my brother was born, we travel all over the Middle East, but I think as it got later on into the 70s, it got worse, and the traveling was not so frequently. But I remember going to places like in Syria and Damascus, the spice markets, and all those spices there really, really, really left an impression on me. Like, I love the smell of spices. Anytime I see them, I want to like look at them because they're so beautiful, so colorful, so fragrant. Those are the most important things for me. I love smelling them. So those are like really, really important for me, the spices, and then of course the church upbringing. A lot of times we visited Turkey, we'd also go to the markets there, and there would be also in Istanbul the spices there. So Syria and Damascus, Turkey and Istanbul, and of course where I'm from, Lebanon, all the markets have spices. So those are like just left a major impression on me as far as the smells goes as I was growing up. This is before like maybe 5 or 6 years old. So around there, this is what it is. But my mom cooked the pastries. We'd use cinnamon and spices and things like that. Lots of syrups and sugary syrups around baklava and things like that. So those are some things I remember, and all the spices used. And the foods, of course, are very, very fragrant foods, and I just love the smells. And I think at this time, and also discovering my mom's and dad's fragrances and perfumes, like my mom, for example, wore Rive Gauche pour Femme. I was so in awe with this bottle, and this beautiful canister, silver and blue bottle. This is Rive Gauche pour Femme, not the pour Homme that's no longer existent. By YSL. So they have their bottle in a canister. They still have this fragrance. I have a bottle, and I just bought it like a year or two ago and featured it in a video, but they don't have the men's. But this bottle really, really, like, I was very visual, and I'm a very vivid person. I love colors and things that stand out, and this bottle really stood out. But other fragrances that my mom wore, Laroche Fidji. Love the way this smells. This is an amazing fragrance. I don't know if it's still around. I think it is, but I'm not 100% sure. Rochas, Madame Rochas. Love this one as well. Lancome Sikkim. Chanel No. 5, Guerlain Shalimar. Those are the fragrances that my mom wore, and I loved smelling them. And then going to my dad, he wore Caron pour un Homme de Caron, Pierre Cardin pour Monsieur. Loved this one. He loved it as well, and loved that bottle with the round top. The cap was really unique. Dior Eau Sauvage, wore that one. Chanel pour Monsieur. Aramis, Paco Rabanne pour Homme. These are some of the fragrances my dad wore. So I'd always love smelling my mom and my dad wearing these fragrances. They did like to go out to nightclubs and things like that. And even when I was a kid, it would be like a restaurant club, something like that, where there would be food, and they'd go with another couple, and that couple would have a daughter or a son, and we're kind of friends, and they're, you know, friends with their friends, and we're talking, they're eating, we're eating, and this is a fun night. They'd go dancing, and the other couple would stay with the kids, and then vice versa. So I remember smelling the fragrances that they wore, because they loved to dance, and they loved going out and you know, feeling like they're young, even though they have a child, and before the second child was born. So they loved smelling great. And my dad and my mom both loved overspraying. And in the 70s, fragrances were also really strong and potent. So I smelled all the stuff on them and really appreciated the smells a lot. Even afterwards, like after a full day of wearing it, you can still smell the smells on people. I would smell it on my mom and my dad, the fragrance, after it's kind of like worn off. Because these fragrances in the 70s were not only strong and potent, but also very long lasting. They'd last on you for days. Also, they were very, very bold fragrances, really, really strong smells. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love fragrance so much, because it's left such an impression on me with the smells. I love smells. So this is the 70s. We're gonna get to the 80s in a bit, but at the end of the 70s, my family, after the war, my dad said, you know what, we've had enough of this war, we gotta get out of here. So my dad, my family, everyone, before my sister was born, packed with my grandmother, my dad's mom, and we moved to Greece. So we lived in Greece for 6-7 months, and this is another different environment and different experience, and the Greek culture, Greek food, Greek smells. And of course, the Greek foods are very similar to, you know, the Mediterranean. So, I mean, there's nuances and differences, but some of the stuff kind of come close, like yogurt, cucumber, mint, all that good stuff is very, very similar. So they were very similar. Plus, the Greeks are Greek Orthodox, Christian Orthodox. Armenians are Christian Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox. So the smells are very similar in the church. So there were similarities here. And that was our brief time living in Greece before we ended up in California. My family moved in the very beginning of the 1980s, 1980 March, from Lebanon in 1979. Around October 79, and then we moved to the USA, California. And so October 79 to Greece, then late March to California in 1980. So we ended up in California, and there's a whole world of smells in California that I really love, and also have a lot to do with my obsession with smells. In the 1980s, early 1980s, in the 70s though, when I was going to school, my school in Lebanon is an Armenian Christian school, and there my specific school also taught Arabic and English. So English was already something that was kind of like something I was learning. So coming to California became very easy for me to pick up the English language, rather than if my family had sent me to, these were private schools, if they had sent me to a school that taught French, might have been a little complicated, more complicated for me to pick up the English. So I picked up English very fast. And also coming to California, it's big state, great state, love California, love living here, and I've loved it ever since I got here. Although it's changed a lot. It's changed from when I first got here in the early 1980s to now. Much more traffic, a lot more international, which is awesome. And then, you know, having access to the best foods possible, international foods here, is also great. But the first 10 years, maybe even going into like 15 years, it wasn't as easy to access all the international foods as it is now. But in the early 80s, one of the things that really stands out vividly in my mind is discovering the grocery store, big supermarkets of the USA, something we didn't really have in Beirut in Lebanon where I lived. We'd have small grocery stores, and then occasionally you'd go to a big supermarket, but they're so far away and so few that most of the time you go to a small grocery store. But in California, in the USA, everything was big, and I especially loved it when my mom went to the cleaning department, cleaning, like the cleaning supplies, the laundry detergents. That's where I started discovering smells, like lots of smells. So I'd go through the aisles and open up every cleaning supply and smell it. I'd be like, okay, that one smells good, that one sucks, this one is weird, that one is bleach, this is ammonia, and gave me a shock to the system. Very first time I smelled ammonia was like, whoa. And then afterwards I would play a trick on relatives coming from back home, and they've never smelled ammonia, and I'd say, okay, here, smell this. This is when I was a kid, and they'd be like getting shocked with it. But so I was discovering smells there. Good smells, bad smells, unique smells, interesting smells, common smells. All of the smells I discovered in the grocery store, going up and down these aisles. Every single bottle would be opened, and smelling them. And some stores like Kmart's and places like that, because we had Kmart's, and then we also had Gemco stores, which became Target in Northern California, in the Peninsula Bay Area here. I'd be smelling not only the cleaning supplies and the laundry detergents and everything there, but there would be like a fragrance department or cologne department or perfume department, whatever you want to call it, and go there and smell every single freaking fragrance that they had and really enjoy some of the smells there. So that was really unique. At that time, my mom wore things like Dior Poison, YSL Opium, Nina Ricci, L'air du Temps, Guerlain Shalimar, Paloma Picasso. Those were some of the fragrances she wore that I really, really loved. But, at the time, that's when you start realizing that, okay, these are women's perfumes. I better not go near those, because this is what society says. Those are like for the ladies, and only for the ladies to be wearing. Even though I love the smell of those fragrances, I enjoyed the smells, I'd be more drawn to my dad's fragrances. He would wear things like Halston Z14, Aramis Devon, Aramis Tuscany Perwomo, Aramis 900, Ralph Lauren Polo, Puig Quorum, all kinds of different fragrances he would wear. And my dad and my mom both bought lots of fragrances, and they'd go through them a lot, and they'd just pile on the fragrances. They loved fragrances, and I started loving fragrances as well. By the time the mid 80s rolled around, and I was just about to enter high school, well, actually this was during junior high, 7th and 8th grade, I started discovering like fragrances for me to have. And one of the very, very first fragrances I got for me was Drakkar Noir. I love that black bottle, that frosted black bottle. It was just amazing, and I loved it. It was really weird though. The very first time I started noticing changes in the way fragrances smell was with Drakkar Noir. I went through probably 5 different bottles of Drakkar Noir. I'd wear that thing all over, from around 84 up until about 88. I was wearing Drakkar Noir, and probably on the 3rd bottle it started smelling different for me. Like, it went from this I think it was a fake or something, I don't know, because some of my bottles would come from the Middle East. Maybe they were bringing back fakes, I don't know, because things there were a little cheaper. But from one bottle to the other, they were like completely different. Like, the second Drakkar Noir smelled very, very beautiful, like fougere to the max. And then the 3rd bottle smelled very medicinal. I was like, what the heck has happened to this juice? It doesn't smell like it is. And I never wore it. It just got left behind. I got another bottle, and I did enjoy it. But at that time, I was getting bored of Drakkar Noir. This was like towards the late 80s. And then around that time, I was wearing things like KL Homme, amazing fragrance from Karl Lagerfeld, amazing Oriental fragrance. Calvin Klein for men, the original Calvin Klein for men. I did also enjoy Aramis New West, Liz Claiborne for men, really unique fragrance. Samba for men. And then also Alfred Sung Homme. Those are some of the fragrances. Fahrenheit from Dior, the original, the Beast, leathery, the gasoline, petrol kind of smell. Loved those fragrances. Towards the end of the 80s, I started really digging things like Cool Water. But before Cool Water, which I never really wore actually, I was wearing Aspen by Coty. And that fragrance really enjoyed for a while, and then I got bored of it. I'm like, this is really boring, aquatic fougere type thing, and I really didn't really enjoy it after that. So I never really jumped on the Cool Water bandwagon, but I did wear a lot of Coty Aspen, and I got bored of it though. But around the 80s also, my family loves flowers, fruits, vegetables, herbs, spices. My dad planted big gardens, huge gardens, big, and these gardens were very fragrant. We had all the different herbs, all the different kind of spices that you can grow, lots of different fruits and vegetables, lots of oranges. You got lemons, of course, lots of lemons, because our Mediterranean diet, lemons are one of the most important Ingredients. Love the lemon note in fragrances. Love the way lemons smell. Love the way citruses smell. Oranges, tangerines, clementines, mandarin oranges, grapefruit, all of the citruses. Just love the way citruses smell. And I think since he had these trees of fruit trees from the citrus fruits, not only the lemons but oranges and all the other citruses, all the flowers that will bloom on these trees were so fragrant. That's why I'm obsessed with neroli and orange blossom, because of this my dad's big gardens that he used to plant and grow, and just all kinds of fruits and vegetables. And then the trees, the citrus trees, were really, really important, and every time they'd bloom I could smell them, and those are amazing. Anytime there's citruses involved, I'm there. I just love the way citruses smell. It's like a very comforting vibe for me. Cozy, comforting, also very refreshing. They could be floral. Florals are always fresh, and citrus florals are both very cozy and comforting, also very invigorating and refreshing. So I just love citrus flowers and citruses in general, and it's because of what my dad grew. He also grew lots of tomatoes and the big bushes that they grow on, and the smell of the tomato leaves, amazing stuff. Figs, fruits, fig trees, everything you can imagine. Plums, lots of plums, lots of lots of apricots, lots of nectarines, and you name it. Everything that he could grow, he would grow in the garden. And late spring, early summer, and summer, everything would be fragrant, although more fragrant during the springtime, and then kind of like time for them to be, picked and utilized during the summer times, and then towards the end of summer. But that stuff has really, really left an impression on me, and I love it. And the herbs, that's one thing I forgot to mention. Herbs galore, like everything you would imagine as far as herbs go. Mint, very important in our diet. Mint is very, very key for me. And I'm very picky with mint. I hate it when it's medicinal or toothpastey smelling in fragrances. I want it to be authentic, and a real chopped mint smell is out of this world. And then you chop up the mint and you sprinkle it into some yogurt, maybe a little bit garlic, and eat that. Yum. It's very, very cooling and refreshing, especially if it's in the summertime. Lots of herbs, basil, thyme, everything you can find that is available as far as herbs go was planted, and we would all consume this stuff fresh in the 80s, on to the 90s, and then into the early 2000s to mid 2000s until my dad passed away. But it's funny, when we first moved to the States, the diet here in California was not like what we were used to. Everything was kind of bad, actually, but our diet was always fresh, very fresh herbs and fruits and vegetables, lots of it, and it was hard to find the stuff. And I think that's one of the reasons my dad was starting to plant all the stuff, because you can find them in the stores. But around the mid-90s is when things kind of changed. Like, I loved arugula as a kid. Even as a little kid, not even 10 years old, I loved that bitter flavor. But it was not found here when we first moved here in the 80s, in the early 80s. Nobody planted it. And so, nobody sold it. It was hard to find it. So maybe at farmers markets and things like that, but very, very hard to find in grocery stores. And so he was planting all this stuff, and then they started popping up everywhere and everybody was having it. But anyway, that's the 80s as far as my influence goes. So my family moved to the Central California in the very, very early 90s, like 1990. We moved there. Hot, really hot, not as like California in along the coast is a lot cooler than the Central Valley area. So we were, we were in hot country. Like, it was really hot there. I guess it was also dry, so it's a dry heat. It's a little different territory, still California. Around that time, I wore other fragrances. One of the fragrances, I already mentioned Samba for Men. I also mentioned Coty Aspen. Those were the fragrances I was wearing at the very early 90s, but then I started wearing Guess Men, which came out in 1991. That was a very exciting fragrance for me. I also wore Sung Om at this time as well, because it was, late 80s when it came out. And I loved Sung Om. I thought it was a great Irish spring soap kind of a fragrance. Great fragrance, great fougere. But also wore Ralph Lauren Safari, amazing scent, which is not smelling like what it used to these days. I don't know what happened to it, but it's destroyed. But at that time, very long lasting. Love that fragrance. Love that. Paul Sebastian PS Fine Cologne, Paloma Picasso Minotaur. And then around 1993, it was like getting really interesting with fragrances. Like I worked Carolina Herrera for men, loved it. And then I also got Paco Rabanne XS. They had similarities and differences. And then I was looking up the perfumers. It's the same perfumer that created both of those, along with two other perfumers for each one. One other perfumer for each one. It's Rosendo Matu, who has his own line now. He created those two fragrances. I was like, whoa. So I like these two fragrances. I wore them around the same time. They had similarities. And then later, before I put this video together, I'm finding out that it was created by the same perfumer. Very, very interesting. Love those two fragrances, but they don't smell anything like they used to before. I love them. I wore Jean Paul Gaultier Le Male, L'Odyssée also, Givenchy Insensé, Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme, Beast. I wore that in 1994, maybe 1995, I can't remember, somewhere around there. And I'd wear that stuff so strong. It is. I also wear it in film school, in art school I went to. That fragrance was beast and a half. Like, it was so strong. Fragrances back then were the most potent. Powerhouse is what I like. I like to make people smell my fragrance, and those are the kind of fragrances that really caught attention. Sometimes people hated it too. Like, I would overspray it, and I can tell people were like turning away, which is fine. It's my fragrance. As long as I don't have to smell somebody's BO, which I have to kind of like get used to, because they have BO and they don't take care of their BO. So this is sort of like a pleasant BO, I guess. Anyway, I really enjoyed that Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme. Amazing scent, amazing. Loved wearing it, but it's nothing like it used to be, what it used to be before. Nothing. Versace Dreamer is another one. I wore Moschino Uomo. Then finally Mugler's Angel Men came out. I think I was really getting into obsession at that time. But let's go back to the mid-90s. Like Mugler's Angel Men came out in 96, but going back to like 94 is when I first discovered Angel for women. And I've told this story over and over again. It's me working in photo labs and my nose getting so used to the chemicals that I'm processing photos. And then ladies would come in wearing Mugler's Angel, because Mugler's Angel came out in 92. I discovered it around 94, 95. And I'd smell this fragrance like, wow, what is this fragrance? It's fruity, it's gourmand, it's caramel, coffee, chocolate, and patchouli. Really, really like invigorating and kind of like uplifting and sparkling and all of that stuff. That was when I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get to know what I'm smelling. So I finally asked the ladies, it's Mugler, it's Terry Mugler, it's Angel by Terry Mugler. I was like, you know what, this stuff is amazing. I gotta have somebody wear it. It's a lady's fragrance. I love the way it smells. I'm gonna get a bottle for my mom. She's gonna smell it and she's gonna wear it and smell it, and I'm gonna love smelling it. And it's just, I mean, I would get samples and spray myself because I love the way it smells, but I wouldn't ever at that time say, okay, I'm gonna get a bottle for myself because it smells great. I have no problem wearing it now, but at that time I was a newbie with this hobby, and I didn't do things like that. But this is around the time of me going to film school, studying filmmaking at an art school here in San Francisco, and also obsessed with making soaps. So I was obsessed with making soaps. There was a book that I discovered called Scents. I've had this book since the mid-90s, and this book had everything to do with scents. It was a very, very cool book. It talked about all different things related to scent. I was obsessed with it. It was published in 1993, and I picked it up about 94 or 95, somewhere around there. But this was my cup of tea. This was like what I was obsessed with. At the time, I was also very, very curious about making soaps. So I was going to school, film school, really like on the side, trying to learn to make soaps. Got into it, got really, really deep into it, started making my soaps, and I got to myself and said, I don't want to do this. This is really weird. I had to go buy fat and animal fat, just all the things that I was like, you know, I was testing things out, and it just wasn't for me. I got bored of it and I gave it up. But this book helped me discover scents a lot. This is way back in the mid-90s, and I learned a lot from this book just because I really like scents, and this was made for me. Like, this was a book for me because I wanted to learn about scents. So the 90s was that time of when I really got obsessed with scents, really started looking into it, and also really being overly obsessed with fragrances. Fragrances are amazing, and I wore Angel Men, which later became Amen, towards the end of the 90s, up until like 2001. Nothing else. I was just constantly wearing it, and at that time it was so beast, so strong, so overwhelming. Little goes a long way, but it was an obsession. This fragrance was amazing. It was sort of similar to Angel for women, but also very different because it had more depth and density to it compared to the ladies. Even though the ladies is strong and it has major sillage and lasting power, I felt like it was transparent. Men's was dense, like thick, like hardy, like really manly, like intense. I liked it. But by the time 2001 got around the corner here, before 9/11, I sort of kind of gave up on it because it was just kind of burning me out, and I think my nose had gotten really used to it, and I kept wanting more sprays. That's what happens sometimes. I like that now where I'm at. I graduate towards different fragrances more frequently, but at that time I didn't make a lot of money. I was poor, of course, going to school, yada yada, and then being obsessed with one fragrance and wearing it a lot. But I wore Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme a lot during that time. I wore L'Odyssée a lot around that time. I wore Dreamer a lot. I wore Moschino a lot. There was a few Versace's that I also wore, the jeans ones. Which one? The blue jeans, the baby blue jeans, those were my two favorites. But although blue jeans is still around, baby blue jeans is not. Blue jeans is really sickly sweet nowadays. I have a bottle. I don't know where it is, but somewhere around here I still have a bottle. But there were also other fragrances from the Versace line, VS and things like that. All that stuff I wore. The Moschino Uomo or something like that was amazing also. All of these fragrances were really awesome, but in the end I was obsessed with Angel for Mugler's Amen. And that was the 90s. 90s was an interesting time. Great music. Loved the music. Great films. I went to film school and studied film, made some films myself. Somehow I ended up working in music rights because it was all connected to motion pictures and advertising and things like that. And here I am today. So the 2000s are a different time for me. It's like Mugler's Amen and Angel Men and Amen led to my appreciation of neroli fragrances. Because in 2001, Mugler's Cologne came out. This was around the time of change, the big 9/11 happened. Mugler's Cologne came out around that time sometime, and went from this really dark, intense fragrance to this very light, refreshing, fresh fragrance. And I was obsessed with Mugler cologne. I wore so much of it, and I kept giving it to my dad, everyone. But around that time, I also discovered Hermès Eau d'Orange Verte, the original, which now has become two versions, the original and the concentrate version. And that's another one that I discovered. So I was obsessed with citruses at the time. I think I had just gotten burnt out of intense fragrances, just way overdone it. And then I was really gravitating towards the fresh ones. And in the early 2000s, I also discovered and appreciated Jo Malone, because I had known about Jo Malone in the late 90s. But I was like, you know what, these are light. I don't want these. I want the more intense powerhouses. But I started appreciating those fragrances in the 2000s. Really, really appreciating them. There's another fragrance that I got in the early 2000s called Paul Smith, the green bottle. Smells like green grass, fresh mowed lawn, fresh. I was really into the freshies at this time, like really gravitating towards freshies, and those are the fragrances that I was wearing. I was wearing a lot of Jo Malones, and just like it left me wanting more. So the 2000s, the whole scent obsession thing, I'd still do it. I'd go to stores, smell everything. I discovered diptyque candles in the early 2000s, thanks to Sex and the City. I just appreciating like more expensive perfumery, more expensive perfumed products, candles and soaps and things like that. Really appreciating all that stuff in the 2000s. Fast forward to the end of 2000s is when I first discovered watching YouTube videos. Now we get to the YouTube videos. I started watching them, and they were okay, like fragrance reviews, people talking about fragrances. I guess I first discovered it by typing out the name of a fragrance into Google, and then a YouTube review would be displayed there, because I'd be like shopping online for the best deals on fragrances. Always done it, and I'm going to do a video about this topic soon as well. But I always like typing. The bottle of not Perry Ellis, what am I saying? The bottle of Paul Smith that I bought, the original green bottle, in the early 2000s. In 2000 or 2001 is when I bought that. I bought it online, looked for it, and I found the tester bottle was really cheap compared to the suggested retail of about $75 at the time. I'm like, okay, I'm buying it half the price. I don't give a shit if it's a tester. I'm gonna buy it. It's a discount. If something's wrong with it, I'll deal with it then. It came and I wore it too much and I loved it. So I always have looked for testers online. Testers are great to buy. They're usually half the price. They don't have the beautiful presentation. I don't really need it. Well, it's nice to have it, but I don't really need it because it's all about the juice in the end. At the end of the day, so I'm always looking for it, and that's how I think I discovered the YouTube videos online, mostly with Al and Robes, Mark. Well, those are there was another guy, the Asian guy. I don't think he is no longer anywhere to be found. I think he killed his channel. Those are the three that I was really watching at the beginning. This is like the very end of the 2000s, 2010, 2011. Because around that time is when I was saying, I'm going to do my own channel. I know how to do this. I know about scents. I know about smells. I know about fragrances and colognes. I can do this myself. I can totally hands down do it. And fast forward to 2012, it's when I started my first channel, Man Loves Cologne. So those of you guys, have you been around since those days, 2012, that channel doesn't exist anymore, know that I've been doing this for a while. This is a channel that I started after that channel was no longer, we don't want to get into the technicalities of that particular channel, and I'm not going to really say what happened, but never do a bad review for a brand, because if you do, they can really, 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 really come after you, and if they want to, they will do something about it. So I don't do bad reviews, but that's another story. Going back to 2012, when I first launched the first channel, around that time is when I had discovered Tom Ford, Frederic Malle, Nascimato, Mugler's fragrances. Going back to 2000, in 2004 is when I first bought a bottle of Be Men by Mugler. Loved that fragrance in the green bottle. That fragrance just means a lot to me because it reminds me of some of the stuff I grew up eating, especially since it has licorice anise in it. Anise was something I was given as a kid for tummy aches, boiled anise. It's good for your digestive system if you just boil the anise and have it, and it just, if you have any issues with digestive things, it's good to calm it. And I think because as a kid I had digestive issues, my mom used to boil it and have me drink it all the time. So I think anise is something that I really love. And also in the Middle East, also around the Mediterranean, people consume ouzo, things like that. Things are made with this anise note, and I love the way this smells. I love it, especially pastis. Give me pastis in the south of France with a couple of cubes of ice, no water, nothing. I'm happy. It's such a great calming drink, and I love the flavor. It's very fragrant. So I loved Be Men. Be Men reminded me of this stuff. I really, really loved it, and it was a flop, I think, for Mugler. Cologne was success, but Be Men for Men came out like 3 years later, and it was a flop. But I wore that fragrance. I bought it in San Diego, and I took it with me to New York City like 3 months later. I was there. I wore it in the winter. It snowed, and that fragrance just really did it for me. I loved it. Love it. That was one of the standout fragrances for me in 2000s. But I had discovered in 2011, 2010, Kilian, Tom Ford, Nascimato, Frederic Malle, Le Labo, all those brands, and it was like, there's brands popping up. Penhaligon's, although Penhaligon's and Annick Goutal were fragrance brands that I discovered in the 90s, in the late 90s, and I completely forgot to mention. These are niche brands that I knew about back in the late 90s from our Saks store here. And Annick Goutal, I remembered also from Saks here. Just great brand. Both brands are great. I still love both of them. I never speak about Unique Goutal though, because they've changed their name over to Goutal now. I should. But Penhaligon's a huge fan of the brand. So those are all the brands I discovered back then, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to start my own channel in 2012. I started. In 2012, September 2012 is when I started my first channel. Unfortunately, that channel doesn't exist anymore. But I had about 550 videos on the channel, lots of video, lots of content. It went for about 3 years, and then everything was gone. So here we are with this channel, but I learned so much with the previous channel and up to this channel. And if you go back to my older videos on this channel to today, they're completely like night and day. Where I was doing videos before and where I'm doing them now are completely different. Where I'm doing them now, it's a small studio that I have rented, that I have my clients come here, that my entire collection is here. I show clients what kind of fragrances they should be wearing, because in San Francisco, they don't have a lot of stores that sell a lot of the fragrances I have access to. So I do that with some of my clients that come here, and also I shoot my videos here. It's a smaller place. It's not a big tall ceilings like in my previous place. That's why a lot of people complain about the audio there, because it was just tall, really tall, and the audio didn't stay in. It would just went up. So here the audio has been great. So if you look back in 2015 to now, my videos 4 years later, 4.5 years later actually, it's night and day. I've been doing them here for about a year now, going in March it'll be a year, and audio is great. We have great audio here, not a lot of noise, although it's a busy office building and also a historic building, so a lot of people coming in and going. It's one of the oldest buildings here in San Francisco. Thankfully I'm able to afford to have this place. But I've learned a lot along the way. I feel like I've become an expert. A lot of people look up to me. A lot of people ask me questions about fragrances, what they should buy, what I think about a specific note. And there's not a lot of notes I hate. There's not. There are things that I don't like too much of. Too much animalic can be too much for me. I cannot tolerate it. Too much funky can be too much for me. I can't tolerate it. For me, in the end, it has to be wearable. If I can't wear it, if I put something on and I don't like the way it smells, I don't want to do anything with it. I don't want to have anything to do with that fragrance. In the end, it has to smell good to me, and that's what's most important. If it smells good to me, I'm going to wear it. I don't really care if it lasts a long time or not. I mean, it's a great benefit to have a very long-lasting fragrance, an intense fragrance, a beast mode fragrance, as some of you like to call it. But for me, the most important thing is it smells good, and it smells good to me. I mean, it's most important is me. I don't care about what other people think about my fragrance. Really, it's not about them. It's for me. I'm wearing it for me. If they like it, that's a benefit. If they don't, they don't. So there's not a lot I don't like. I don't like cologne. Cologne is a really, really tough note. Really tough note. Extremely tough note. I hate it in fragrances. There's some fragrances that should be great to me, but I can't stand them. I can't stand them because they use an overdose of cologne. Cologne is a synthetic molecule that makes things smell fishy and aquatic. Cannot do it. Cannot do it. Makes me sick. Overly metallic and sharp. Those are really, really hard for me to appreciate. Although this particular style is something that I've enjoyed lately more and more, including aquatics. I hated aquatics before. I despised them, but slowly I've been getting into them. But still, cologne, an overdose of it, makes me gag. It really literally makes me gag because it smells like rotting fish. I mean, I've spoken about rotting fish fragrances on the old channel. If you've been following me since then, you probably know what I hated. And again, going back to the old channel, I don't talk about anything negative much anymore here. It's not worth going through what I went through. It was not fun. Definitely not fun. So mostly positive here. And in fact, I don't really want to do negative reviews. Why should I? There's a lot of great fragrances out there, and a lot of great fragrances need to be talked about. I'm going to do it. So that's what this channel is mostly for. I mean, yes, I'm going to rant on some stuff here and there. I'm going to rant on clones. There's way too many clones out there and way too many houses doing clones. Nothing but clones, so help me God. Another clone. Come on. Can't you get original? Do something original. Yeah, clones I don't talk about here on this channel whatsoever. Clone houses are even worse. I mean, clones, okay, I can tolerate from a house if they make a clone or inspired fragrance once in a while, but a clone house, absolutely a no-no. Absolutely no-no. What else? Saft Bon. So in 2015, during the time of the transition to this channel, also Michelin Kamen of Saft Bon approached me about being their YouTube video reviewer, the only one for this, one of the world's biggest perfume websites, and I do a video a week there. If you guys haven't noticed, we do a lot of giveaways there. If you still haven't gone there to check it out and also register to participate in their giveaways, you should. Definitely do some really, really great giveaways there. We gave away a whole bottle of Great Britain from Rochas, worth $1,750. So definitely go register. But yeah, I've been with Saft Bon for over 4 years. I mean, if you haven't noticed, you probably have. And this channel has grown, and I've grown a lot. I know a lot about fragrances. I know what I like and I know what I don't like. And again, I'm not doing any negative reviews. There's some obvious negative reviews on the channel and you guys get pissed off at me for doing them. But then again, sometimes you guys are getting pissed off at me for doing nothing but positive reviews. So once in a while, I'm going to rag. I can't help it, but I try and be as diplomatic as I can. I don't want to burn any bridges with anyone. I mean, I've already done that, and it's not worth it. It's not my fault that I burned bridges with some brands. They have done it on their own. I just don't want to be associated with them. So if you don't see specific brands on this channel, there might be a reason. I don't want to do any videos for them, or I don't like their fragrances, or I don't want to have anything to associate with that particular brand. But most brands are game here. I do a lot of sponsored videos, guys. I know you do know this. There are bottles sent to me, but I also go to fairs. I sample these fragrances prior. I smell things. These fairs are very, very important to me, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to continue this channel, and I'm going to continue going to these fairs. I'm going to learn about new fragrances that are coming out, and I'm going to come back and tell you about them. Those are ones that are sponsored. I buy a lot of fragrances also. I buy so many fragrances. I buy lots of designers. Most of the designers, in fact, all the designers are purchased by me. If I do a designer video review here, it's purchased by me. Everything from Chanel, Tom Ford, Mugler, Guerlain, Maison Margiela, Dior, all of that stuff. I buy them. It's with my own money because I love fragrances. And sometimes you guys say, if I don't like a fragrance, why did you buy it? Well, how am I going to tell you about the frickin' fragrance? I like to have a bottle in my hand to show you that I'm talking about a fragrance. I hate doing video reviews from samples. It's one of the things I despise, and if anybody wants to send me a sample to sponsor a video review, I decline. I'm like, why am I going to hold up this bottle, this sample bottle, and talk to you about it? It's not the full experience for me, and I'd rather not do a video and spend all this time creating content from a sample. So I will not do any videos on the channel from samples unless, now hear me this, if this fragrance is quite the most expensive, like if a 10 ml that they give me is like $200 versus like $1,000 for a 100 ml bottle, whatever. I'm just making up prices, but I generally don't want to do videos from samples. Now the previous channel had so many videos about fragrances from samples. I did them a lot, but I think I've grown and I've gotten to a stage where I don't need to do samples. No sample reviews here. But don't hold me to that. There might be the occasional case. But other than that, I think this is it. I'm in the studio here. I'm planning a video to do my collection video sometime soon. So stay tuned for that. It's been tough. It's been a very, very busy year. Lots going on. I'm currently going through some dental stuff, and hopefully my face isn't swollen anymore because it was swollen a lot over the weekend. And I hadn't been able to shoot videos. But a lot has happened. Got a cold. Dental issues came up. So I've been tied up. But I'm learning as much as I can. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying the videos as much as you seem to be. If there's any specific videos you want me to do, please do send an email to lfsgquestions@gmail.com so that I can find out what videos you want me to work on. Other than that, I don't know what else to say, guys. I appreciate you watching this video about my journey on how I got here. And where am I going next? Well, I think you're going to have to tune in to find out. There's a lot of stuff developing here. Hopefully to announce here and there, but for now, it's all about the videos. And I'm hoping you guys are liking my guests as well. My ongoing guests include Dahlia, who you've seen a lot of videos with, Dana, who you guys know, and also Ashley. I am going to be doing some Ashley videos with Ashley, so if you like Ashley, these are not reviews specifically, they're going to be more educational kind of videos, because I love being educated about perfumes. I love history. I love the notes. So if you want to learn, stay tuned for those videos, because they're going to be great. We're doing a series of 10 videos. We're going to be doing them remotely, but they're all focused on fragrances. So if you like to learn, stay tuned for those. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. I appreciate you. I thank you very much for continuing to support this channel. I know a lot of you are really pissed off at sponsored content, but hey, I do those as well as do the non-sponsored ones, as there are some fragrances, like I said, that I love, that I've sampled, and there are fragrances that I love and buy, and there are fragrances I don't love and still buy. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.